actually welcome you all, I think, on behalf of the Rotary Satyanarayana Center and the World Humanities Report that not many of you know about it. I'll say a couple of sentences about that. Rotary Satyanarayana Center is little more than 2 years old, and we have a kind of very robust and running postdoctoral program at Rotary, and we have some of our postdoctoral fellows here present today, but there's some are out of the university, gone for their work. And so we have been, this whole academic year, I think this is the last one for this term, and this academic year, we have done a series of seminars this academic year, very regular in terms of our seminar series, and our postdoctoral fellows have presented their work. We have scholars coming from outside representing. We have done a few online presentations as well. So I'm very happy that we're coming to the end of it as far as this academic year is concerned. And the World Humanities Report, I just want to say that this is a global initiative supported by UNESCO and coordinated by CHCI, United States, and CIPSH and Paris agencies, organizations, academic organizations, network organizations who 2 years ago started to create a kind of global humanities report. And for that, they divided the world into 8 regions. And I was invited by CHCI to anchor that for India and South Asia. And happily, it's only yesterday that we managed to, the report in terms of what we have done, it's all uploaded into a Creative Commons. I'm going to write an email to our community here so that everybody can access. This is actually for everybody, and the protocols for using it is very simple. You acknowledge and you use it and you share it with others. This is what the purpose of the World Humanities Report. You will also find other regions. I think some regions are still working, they haven't really finished, but we have finished, and when I say finished, we have done 13 essays and 12 short videos. There's a part of the humanities and then stuff like that. And the fundamental question that we're asking there is the enabling idea of humanities, how humanities have enabled us in contemporary time to understand our social realities. So that's it. It's a collaboration, and it gives me a great pleasure actually to welcome Professor Anindita Mukhopadhyay, historian, modern historian from Central University of Hyderabad, who has specializes in Indian history, and his research actually encompasses, if I were to say, gets into the heart of the juridical imagination in modern times, about law, about subjectivity, about the relationship between law and power and culture, the cultural representations of law, and so on and so forth. Her publication is a beautiful book called Behind the Mask, The Cultural Identity of Legal Subject in Colonial Bengal, basically 18th and early 20th century kind of understanding of how law kind of evolving in the colonial context. Then she has been working on various aspects connected to law and subjectivity. There is also another dimension to Professor Anindita's work, that is her deep abiding interest in literature and translation. She has done a lot of very interesting translation, and again, this academic year, Zoya and Saindava here as a part of the English literature. This thing we have done a lot.
We're just literature,
Sorry, literature, and we have done actually a lot of work on translation. And we have done a lot of presentations on translation. So this is again, Anindita has a lot of interest in translation. And she had translated Tagore's Session Kavita, which is the last poem into English. She's also done Sharachandra Chattopadhyay's stories into English. She's also, the latest book is called The Children's Games, Adults Gambits, right? Children's Games and Adult Gambits. And this is from Vidyasagar to Satyajit Ray, which actually is published by Korean Black Swan in 2019. Today's talk I thought was extremely fascinating because it is, raises a lot of questions about a very important question that we often raise about the history of modernity in our part of the world. And the conventional understanding that it's a colonialism, which is where you have to go and look for it. This conventional understanding turns out to be, to me, a kind of lazy theorization, because often when people go to the pre-colonial period, you find there are a lot of interesting examples and processes where through texts and so on, you would find the elements of modernity, elements of what you consider modernity, you can find there. So it is not correct to say that modernity's emergence is absolutely there within the colonial period alone. I think there is a long history that stretches into the 17th, 18th centuries at least. And so today she is talking about the text. I don't want to say more about that text. This is Banarasi's text, the autobiographical text of the 17th, 18th century, 17th century. And so we are looking forward to hearing from her, and she speaks for 45 minutes. Then you have the Q&A. Welcome.
I feel very privileged to stand here today. I owe special thanks to Professor Vishnu Mahapatra and Moturi Satyanarayana Center for Advanced Study in the Humanities and Social Science for making it possible for me to visit Krea. This particular paper, which I have got here, also owes a lot to how I have done Royal Society in my classrooms. And I realized early on in the day that I just couldn't launch into the colonial redefinition of law and jurisprudence and new principles of justice. I really needed to reach back and try to see if I could look for continuities or for a certain location of these principles of everyday governance, which might be carried over into the colonial period. And in this context, I would like to very briefly mention my supervisor, Professor Satish Sabharwal, who many years ago, in a strange, in a very strange personal manner, had given me a copy of Ardhakathanaka, and he had asked me to read it, very carefully. And it was as I was teaching Royal Society in the past few years that I realized that Ardhakathanaka provided me the entry point to the kind of questions that I was going to raise with my class. So yes, I do owe a certain recognition to very bright classroom participation and discussion around this particular case. Banarasi Das, very briefly, was a Jain merchant who was part of a very strong community with massive geographical connections across almost all the major urban centers of North India. North India in the 16th and 17th century would mean Mughal India. And what we actually see in the late 16th and 17th century are multiple points of power, multiple points of authority, but an overarching Mughal state structure. I would like to present here a remarkable intellect which looks at community as a given in everyday lives for ordinary men and women, but in a very radical departure from conventionally following the traditional way of life set out by families. Banarasi Das actually goes out of his way to question each and every community precept. Sexual morality, question. Caste-based or occupation-based education, question mark. Normal ways of understanding religious identities, question mark. Normal ways of understanding rituals, question mark. Right? So you would find an extremely skeptical and extremely powerful searchlight intellect beginning to literally erode the frame in which the community was trying to hold him in, right? And you find that he is wildly experimenting with his own life in order to break the barriers of this kind of conventional subjectivity, collective subjectivity, and search for himself a deeper individualistic spiritual meaning, right, within this given of a community. We find obviously very strong ambiguous oscillations between sometimes understanding that perhaps the community is right in guiding the wayward footsteps of a rather erring member, right? Because sometimes he did have diseases coming out of his rather wayward lifestyle. Sometimes he also went bankrupt, experimenting too free with the community resources. After all, he was a merchant and free-floating, non-directed economic activity obviously would not get him very far. And so he did have some rather lean moments, which of course the community had to pay for. But with all these downs, we find that the inimitable and this radical consciousness which flashes through, right, his writings, mark what I would understand as a searching, doubting, skeptical mind, where still perhaps we need to see the modern, right? This is where you need to locate the modern, a new orientation, a new way of making sense of a world which refuses to be bound by given definitions of collective wisdom. So this is going to be the first part of a subjectivity which is self-made, right? He makes it for himself, and there is, of course, a very strong spiritual content which runs through it all. And there is also a new experimentation with the genre, which is the autobiographical element of writing, a very personalized account of his rather turbulent life. However, all through his autobiographical narrative, there is another domain, the domain of the politic. And here we see Banarasi Das not being able to pull together a framework. And that is where we find that the other kind of subjectivity, right, highlight the political subjectivity, which we encountered much later in the colonial period, somehow is struggling to find a understanding of connectedness to the political, but somewhere not having the language, not having the vocabulary to frame a certain location in the political. So here, I would like to say that there is a recognition that the political events episodic in his narrative are important. They're life-changing, but they do not have the kind of structural coherence that you find emerging in the way he is grounding his subjectivity, his spiritual subjectivity, his personal subjectivity, his self, right? This is where I find two kinds of well, there are many types of modernity, right? Here, I would like to push two. The first one will be quest for the self in a given milieu of community and religion. And here we have a very clear modern questioning attitude where the notion of the self is experimented with, and finally it is wrested from the depths of the community as something very, very strongly individualized. Right? So this is really one kind of modernity coming out of the pre-colonial, not certainly out of the colonial. But the other kind, the political kind, I'm going to try and see if Banarasi Das has necessary vocabulary, has necessary grammar to articulate it as part of his political subjectivity. But here I would like to keep a very big open space for discussion. But I would like to perhaps advance the more conventional suggestion that a political subjectivity does seem to come from a colonial moment. I will not read. I will only read some parts of the paper. I will try to keep well within the time. But in case I do not finish the overall argument, I will stop and leave it for the discussion to take it up. The paper is divided into two parts, part 1 and part 2. And in the first part, I look at the self and subjectivity. And in the second part, I look at the political domain and the episodic events which are selected. I have not been able to give a blow-by-blow account of the many events that are scattered across the text, but I have taken some very difficult ones, and I've tried to give some structure to these episodes, and then I've tried to draw it together as part of a political subjectivity, which is actually alien to Banarasi Das's language, political language. In historical queries, scholars commonly twin colonial modernity, thereby firmly placing modernity as an adjunct of colonialism. Colonial discourses are also replete with this particular claim to have brought modernity to a static, stagnant, and decadent civilization that had lost all claims to progressive thought and dynamic institutions. There were more damning corollaries that accompanied the charges of a set of moribund cultures that did not promote individualism and ipso facto critical and rational thought. These were all-powerful communities that did not encourage individualism and certainly did not welcome any intellectual originality which took away a person from comfortably fitting into the narrative. Banarasi Das's autobiography, Ardhakathanaka, written in 1641, and retrospectively providing a narrative which delved deep into the origins and fortunes of his family, through which a razor-keen skeptical intelligence sparkled, gives the lie to the above assumptions. It refused to take any collective community-oriented conventions as inviolable and laughed to scorn any expectations that he, Banarasi Das, would be blindly bound by the unexplained rules that guided their everyday. The text, therefore, makes it easy to argue that a rational and critical mind was not peculiar to the colonial phase, but could be located across space and time in pre-colonial India. Still, the genre of the autobiography did not belong to the pre-colonial era, and therefore Ardhakathanaka is indeed unique as a text. Banarasi Das's satirical and mature gaze from the very beginning of the narrative zeroes in on community-held rules and conventions as irrational and futile. Das is also conscious that his taking of the pen is unusual, and the tracking of a turbulent and mobile family history and his own rebellious position within it had to be explained. And he states, "It occurred to me that I should make my history about it." There is yet another reason, but which is conjectural, which I'll make at the end of this particular section. There is a history of Malwa here, where a huge amount of scholarship have provided a certain frame of analysis, and that particular frame is called Islamicate, right? Now, there are some very important conventions, historical conventions, that have guided medieval and early modern studies and have looked at the Muslim rules across different systems, Muslim rules and administrative systems across north, east, and south of India as Muslim rule, but not therefore Muslim state. And there has been a rather easy and some important contemporary historians are talking about a rather lazy way of understanding a public order where the Muslim ruling classes have left the pluralistic cultures of different religious communities well alone. And careful scholarship across time has shown that actually this was not the case. The real case was that there was a very careful reading of the local provisions, of the local customs by the Mughal state, and there was in public spaces, in different ways of interpreting customary laws, there was indeed a very important slice of Mughal governments or Muslim governments, right, which did have a very clear logging, a very clear engagement with the so-called autonomous units of different communities, religious communities, right? So this is where one actually understands that while the larger pluralistic networks, community networks, were left to function undisturbed, but there was indeed a presence of Muslim everyday governance that very carefully, very diplomatically established order, allowed a certain kind of deep-rooted notion of security to take to legitimize its presence in different regions of India, but which did not upset, as it were, the apple cart, right, of different community identities. And here, the Mughal Empire, which in Banarasi Das's accounts actually begins with the fortunes of the family, also has a very important, shall we say, a very, very important political role to play, because the Mughal area of command of political domination, actually also very dramatically fits into the zone of operation of the Jaina family that Banarasi Das traces. So there is a genealogical family tree which Banarasi Das puts in place at the very beginning of his text, which is the fact that he comes out of the north. He was basically from a Rajput family, but in some distant, very, very long ago, forgotten, family history, they were exposed to the teachings of a great teacher and they became Jains. And they eschewed military aggression, and they became the leaders of the Mala, the Rosary, and became, non-violent. They also came down, and the first visible individual who kind of pops up in the narrative is his own grandfather, Muldas. And Muldas comes in the entourage of a Mughal officer. So this is where you actually have coming together of individual family portraits, disconnected from the larger family, but following the political fortunes of a rapidly growing political power of the Mughals. And here again, one would like to see state-backed business enterprise, which Muldas very quickly gets into. He becomes a money lender. He starts a family, but then unfortunately, so he will come back to this moment a little later, go back to the article. He is working on behalf of the Mughal family. And there is a tragic moment in which Muldas dies, leaving his little child and wife alone. And at this point, the Mughal Amir shuts down Muldas's business, and you find that the widow and the child is left to fend for themselves without any financial support. So here we have a larger community network where we find the family fortunes once again unfolding, not in Krea, which is the place of Muldas's location, but slightly away to Jaunpur. So you have a little bit of movement. So all of it is in the western regions, Malwa, Jaunpur, Agra, in the central and west. And we find that the widow and the child moves to Jaunpur under the larger community network, where Kharak's Sena, the little child, grows securely with community care, and he moves once he achieves a certain degree of maturity. He quietly moves to Bengal to work as a revenue collector under another Shriman, right? Under another one of his community, strong community representatives. One would, here again, there is a standard community, stereotypical community expectation that a child brought up within the community would continue as part of its functioning unit as he goes to maturity and as he becomes a viable economic option for the community. But then Kharak Sen wanted a political connection, wanted a different kind of occupation, and so he sought in another Shriman community, in another geographical region, employment. Uh, However, this is again where we see that the political connection, where there are certain assumptions of duties and responsibilities, which of course Rai Khanna, the Diwan in Bengal, Jain Shrimal, but who also had achieved a position of trust within a Muslim government. Right? Okay, so Bengal had been under the Muslim rule for more than 500 years, right? Starting from the 20th century right down to 1760, at which point the colonial government stepped in. So in all these years, you do have a very important collaborative, positioning of Hindus and non-Muslims like Jainas in the administrative, systems that were run by, both Hindu, not Jaina, as Rai Khanna is obviously non-Muslim, and you have therefore a very, how can I put this, a very secular, a very different kind of an administration, which put non-Muslims in positions of power, gave them enormous autonomy, and also provided them with the kind of administrative space, administrative flexibility, which allowed Rai Khanna to employ people from his own community to keep his, to keep his role as the one, not just functioning, but also functioning very efficiently. We also find, and here Banarasi Das is making Krea the mouthpiece of what makes Rai Khanna a very likable and a very lovable extension of the community, Shriman community. The fact that he trusted, the number of officers who collected revenue. Collecting revenue, collecting tax is a rather sensitive operation, and Rai Khanna trusted his forebears sufficiently not to ask for very clear accounting. So he would keep ledgers, he would keep a very, very, shall we say, a trusting, set of figures as provided by his 100-strong Shrimal forecasts or revenue collectors. And Krea, as he joins the regiment of officers under Rai Khanna, also gets 4 parganas for getting revenue collections and handing it over to Rai Khanna. So you have within the Mughal governments, everyday functioning of Mughal administration or Muslim administration, you have tremendous autonomy given to non-Muslims, and their area or their domain of power is actually left unquestioned. This is something that I think we need to keep in mind. We are talking about the 16th century, late 16th century, where Bengal has already passed from various political vicissitudes. So you do have the Afghans, you have the Pathans. Now it is actually the turn of the Mughals who are battling for Bengal. So in spite of all these political tussles happening around this particular region, you have Jain, a non-Muslim Diwan, who is given an army of local or expatriate Shrimas to work under him without straight runs. No one asks. He doesn't abuse his position, and neither would his army of Shrimas. So this is a trust. This is a political economic based on trust, and it seems that it is inviolable because it works. And I would also like to, I think, make a very important point here that this particular political economic environment is pluralistic, and it does not have, very, very importantly, it does not have any peculiarly antagonistic Hindu-Muslim discourse. And much more important, it does not seem to have a political domination in a very, in a very astute power network. It seems like the non-Muslims are treated not just at par, but they are given special positions, special arenas, which are completely left them to manage. This is, I think, a very important understanding that Banarasi does. You see, he doesn't have a political agenda. It's an autobiography. He's not giving it to us, right? It is coming out of how he would record his spiritual quest. The political is just by the way, ETW, right? And it is here that the truth spills out. So I would like to keep this particular note running all through the paper, because there are infringements of this understanding of a Hindu-Muslim, or Hindu-Jaina pluralistic, harmonious coexistence. There are. This is an arbitrary, authoritarian set of ruling, elites across the entire territorial range of India. So you are going to have infringements of a certain pluralistic harmony. There will be infringements, but by and large, it seems like in the everyday governance, power structures, there have been major accommodation of non-Muslim communities as equals and sometimes working as autonomous groups. But then, rather than not being a jail, Karam Sen, having found his feet rather rapidly as a revenue collector, obviously making tons of money, he is pretty happy. And there is a problem just about to come up with Radhana's Jaina religious quest, which is that he suddenly wants to go on a village. And he asks permission of his Muslim superior, Sultan Ruki, and he is given permission. And during his pilgrimage, he dies. And the entire, autonomous domain that Radhana was in charge of comes crashing down. And Karam Sen, a young boy who is, part of Radhana's entourage, just quietly runs away with whatever little money he has made over the past few months, right? He just doesn't trust the political system or run by non-Jaina political law. He doesn't trust because he doesn't know it, you see, right? He knows Radhana, he knows Srimal, and he knows Kurishus coming out of Radhana's domain. But he is not so he's not working for the Muslim groups. He's working for Radhana, right? And the moment Radhana, pops it, he runs away, right? He comes back to Jaunpur, to his right? So back to the old community. Safe is good, unsafe is bad. So this is something which we find Banarasi does nothing. Please understand this. Karak said, after this does not experiment. That was Bengal was his last experiment with out of the way, experiment with different way of earning money. After that, he stays with known family networks and he does pretty well. He gets married and he produces a couple of sons. And here, so now I'll come back to the paper. In narrating this family history, the rational Banarasi Das sarcastically comments that as prosperity begets the desire for a son, Karak Sen and his wife traveled to Rohtak to offer worship to the shrine of the Sati, but they were robbed of everything. Banarasi Das's taught observation that such divine perfidy did not teach his parents that such beliefs are worthless. Foolish people still do not understand that there was no need for divine interventions to pursue a happy interior life. He rather mockingly connects his parents' belief that his own birth was a result of a second visit to the Sati shrine, and because he was born in Kasi, the place of two Janaki Parsva and Suparsva, he was renamed Banarasi from Vikramjit with proper priestly incantations that were all pretenses and which gullible people like his own father believed in implicitly. And a small example of his writing style, which I think will resonate with many of us here. O Lord, this little child bows at your feet. With these words, the priest sat down and, assuming the posture for meditation, pretended to enter into a deep trance, counterfeiting a profound mystic silence. Karak said, beneath the words of the priest, the same tone of skeptical rejection of his community's requirements of basic education and sexual morality made his exasperated elders accost Banarasi Das with words of advice. Give up your ways of life, since love is for the dervish, not for you. Give up your foolish pursuit of learning, since learning is only for Brahmins and bards. A merchant's son should tend sharp. Das was insatiable about learning and wrote poetry to his amour, a prostitute, pursuits that were comprehensible to some special friends. Chandraghan, after 30 years, he remembers the names of his cronies. Chandraghan, Udaykaran, and Khan. Together we made obscene fun of the religious life. Using his own father Karak Sen as a marker for calibrating the conventional Jaina norms that made for a good and prosperous householder, Banarasi traces the conventional Jain norms. Banarasi traces the community's hardworking, emotionally resilient, acquisitive collective identity, totally inimical to Banarasi's experiments with love and learning, for which he approached prostitutes and learned family partners. He, however, did not see marriage and love as connected, a rather masculine evasion of familial morality, which enjoined chastity for women, but winked at sexual promiscuity for men. However, the reader of Banarasi's text can immediately recognize a robust quest for a centered self that wades through sexual love for a prostitute, wades through the writing of romantic poetry and the recitation of Sufi poetry to his select friends, and he becomes a disciple of a Brahmin Pandit for Shastric learning. And all these experiments, as I see it, turn with a very restless dissatisfaction with what the community has chalked out for him and what his own understanding of rebelliousness actually gives to him. Even this Jain religious tradition, he has the courage to leave for a while for Shaivism, though he loses faith in that as well. and I quote, "I have been an ardent devotee of Shiva, but when I fell down the stairs and was severely hurt, Shiva did not come to my aid." And he celebrates atheism with a vengeance, thus revealing himself to the reader as a thinker who trod extreme pathways to finally understand that his own clarity about the all-knowing Gabriel, right? The point of Nirvana, that he was a primitive earthworm with no more than the haziest of awareness, yet armed with this clarity and state. As a poet, I match this in composing verses on spiritual themes. My intentions are unsullied. I have a steadfast mind. I am pure in heart and always strive for equanimity. Sometimes I break into a dance when I'm alone. Yet I am also prone to sudden irrational feelings of sheer dread. This is when he's winding up his autobiography, and this is how he sums up his understanding of a center self. Right. So he is looking at his arrival, if you like, as a steady, centered person after having left behind a huge amount of human debris behind. So he has broken hearts. He has, done many things he's not particularly proud of. In fact, he is there his darkest secrets. If you really want to read Banarasi Das, you have to be prepared for shocks, because he does have a very, very experimental way to read conventions. And he, after having done all that, and coming to Theravada, coming to Adhyatma, understanding of a new way of understanding Jaina, spiritual quest. You have even an institution which is called the Banarasi Heresy, right, within the literary traditions of Jaina texts. But Banarasi Das does not really want the institution to pass the last word. He wants to write the last word on himself. Right? And I think that is also modern. That is a very, very important aspect of modernity. Surely this is a realization of personal freedom of any kind of political compulsion, and freedom from how other traditions, even his own tradition, choose to record. He wants to record himself. And we as readers, right, it's an open text. There is a text in Penguin, which gives you Ardhakathanaka. So even 21st century readers will be able to access much of what this rather brilliant man tried to do with his life. This is, I would like to say, a thoughtful subjective position, which does not care for how his own tradition will be remembered or any kind of institutional location of himself, but he writes about his confused and wavering trajectories to find himself. That is modern. Uncharted and unclear terrains, however, are the leading questions that alert the reader that Banarasi Das is still struggling to find structures, right? So he may have found finally a structure to his spirituality, but has he found a structure to his political experiences? And this is where I would like to say that the Ardhakathanaka of Banarasi narrates threatening and violent political events as episodic, fragmented, and destructive. There is no available knowledge structure that he can fit them into. I would like to just say here, as a kind of throwaway, by the way, point, we had Professor Upandil Singh in our university just 4 days ago, and she said that it was only in 1913, very much here in Madras, that the manuscript of Kautilya's Arthashastra was handed over by a person called Shastri, right? And it was this manuscript which suddenly alerted the Indian as well as the European scholarship to the presence of such an amazing work on scripture. But that's not important, right? We are talking about certainty, and it doesn't have that. he doesn't have the vocabulary to find the structure. So he gives you very important political episodes to this domain of an unstructured perception of political authority and power without them. So I will just very quickly pull together Muldas and Krea and their experimentations with the following of a political fortune, right? A political fortune through state, through administrative, through powerful figures in administration. And he finds that finally, both the dead Muldas obviously would have a certain, his wife would have, his widow would have a very opaque, a very dangerous understanding of seeming prosperity, but which can be taken away like this, right? Which can just disappear. With the first political, storm, just disappear. It will not have any staying power. And is a very young person who realizes that the moment his Shrimal community network in Bengal disappears, and he is faced with a totally unknown Muslim political administrative system with no intervening opinion, he runs away. Right? So this is how I would like to say it. These are seen to be very opaque, very, very dangerous political terrains, which can give tremendous financial returns, but which can also take them away very, very quick. And therefore, the tried and tested Shrimal community economic networks seem to be much more safe.
Yeah, 10 minutes.
The mature Banarasi's gradual unfolding of this illegible side of power and authority as the Mughal political dynasty ruling from a distant center, yet invisibly weaving into the everyday fabric of ordinary lives, is starkly visible when Das records the sudden and inexplicable arrival of Prince Salim near Jaunpur at a small place called Kondaband, where he supposedly has come to hunt. But Akbar, his father, is extremely suspicious of this sudden, desire to hunt in a faraway position, a faraway place. And so he orders the Jaunpur governor, Khan, to arrest Prince Salim, right? So this is going to be the future Jahangir, right? So he orders him to arrest so Das is recording this. And he says that the moment Khilji Khan receives this political order coming from the Emperor Akbar himself, he panics and prepares John for a siege. He empties out women and children. He stores arms. He brings in food, and he arms the town. Everything is in preparation for war. The male residents of Jaunpur approach Khilji Khan for assurance, right? And Khilji Khan says, and I have got it, Khilji Khan says, I'm facing a death trap myself. Don't ask me for advice. And unhappily, therefore, the moneyed people, these are the jewelers, right? The moneyed people, unhappily, the jewelers determined to leave the town. Khadak Sen fled to a village near Lachmanpura. And then, after about a week, news arrived that all was normal in Jaunpur once again, right? And they've all come back. So this is actually a historical. This is so Banarasi Das's recounting is not any figment of his imagination. It actually happened in 1999, as Mukhopadhyay's notes will tell us, and it is following Persian chronicles that Mukhopadhyay actually verifies much of these claims of Banarasi's remembrances, memories of these political events, because the Muslim chronicles are very accurate in pegging down the major events that shape the Mughal Empire. They even have a particular who's and who, and quite a lot of these governors that Banarasi Das mentions actually have been fleshed out in these chronicles, in these Persian chronicles. So there may be a few, probably he's writing almost 30 years after the events have taken place. So there may be a few slip-ups, but by and large, you have a fairly accurate rendition of these political events that are indeed life-changing, right? They really do have massive impact on ordinary people's, ordinary lives. And so you have right. So you have Prince Ali, who finally left his so-called safe place of Shigar and comes down to Gomti, closer to Jaunpur, asks a person called Lala Beg to get the governor of Jaunpur to see. And once the governor of Jaunpur comes in response to the summons, royal summons, he is, and this is what Banarasi Das records, he is overwhelmed with Prince Ali's presence, and he completely obviously tosses Akbar's a command of arresting the prince out the window, and he falls at the prince's feet, and Salim graciously pardons him. And this is a very, very important understanding of a hierarchical order. So I will just very quickly, bring in scholarship like Muzaffarullah, political language of Islam, where he talks about sovereignty, which resides at two levels in the Mughal polity. The first level is the personal empowered body of the sovereigns. Right? It's the royal blood, it's through flesh, right? So that is where there is a very important residence, a very important location of sovereignty, which is royal. It kind of accompanies the embodied presence of royal power. So you have Salim carrying that order of sovereignty, whereas the letter, the sealed letter coming from Agra, from Akbar, is actually not present in person. And therefore, when a lesser, power under the arch of the Mughal state confronts royalty in person, you have the winning out of the real presence over the symbolic presence of the letter. Right? So this is where you actually have a complete buckling. He just collapses. He just falls at the feet of the prince. So this is one notion of sovereignty which is embodied. And the other understanding of sovereignty is the systems, the administrative systems, right? So we will come to that in a bit. But the most important is Banarasi Das's recording of the death of Akbar. And the death of Akbar is relayed through word of mouth, and it sort of spreads through the empire. And in Jaunpur, this is how Banarasi Das records it. The alarming news of his death spread fast and soon reached Jaunpur. People felt suddenly orphaned and insecure without their sire. These are non-Muslims, by the way. Terror raged everywhere. The hearts of men trembled with dark apprehension. Their faces became drained of color. I was sitting up a flight of stairs in my house when I heard the dreadful news. It made me shake with violent, uncontrollable agitation. I reeled and, losing my balance, fell down the stairs in a faint. The whole town was in a tremor. I just want to be small. I can't give the whole thing, but he actually practiced color. He was reading. Right? So that wasn't a pretense. It was a real, genuine moment of horror, right? That suddenly the state was gone, right? With the death of the emperor, there was no state. Right, so a sensitive person like Banarasi would understand it not as a threatening or a lack of security for private property, but the very understanding of a crumbling order. Right, just that was his problem. Okay, but the other normal reactions, the normal is Banarasi Das's reaction, right? But the normal reactions are, look, everyone closes the doors of his house in panic. Shopkeepers shut down their shops. Feverishly, the rich hid their jewels and costly attire underground. Many of them quickly dumped their wealth and their ready capital and rushed to save and secluded spaces. Every householder began stocking his home with weapons and arms. Rich men took to wearing thick, rough clothes, such as are worn by the poor, in order to conceal their status. Women shunned finery, dressing in shabby, lustreless clothes. There were no thieves or robbers about, but yet there was this total panic. The commotion subsided after 10 days when a letter arrived from Agra bearing news that all was well in the capital. Now Akbar's eldest son, Prince Salim, had been enthroned as Sultan Nurul reigned, and he reigned supreme and unchallenged throughout the land. Okay? So this is where, through 52 years of Akbar's rule, had created a deep space of legitimacy for the Mughal state in the imagination of the ordinary people, regardless of any religious identity. While there had been in the no philosophical solidity about the state, as there had been about karma and fate when we have referred to human subjectivity, these events were cataclysmic for the people, as indeed for us too. The necessity of the state, these spontaneous explosions of human anxieties seem to suggest, was most acutely felt just when state power and authority was at its most vulnerable. A threatened civil war, that's the first instance when suddenly appears out of the blue outside Jaunpur. A threatened civil war, and the second episode, the death of the most powerful emperor, were liminal moments for the state. Das's physical reaction of fainting and falling down the stairs was possible because he was more keenly conscious of the possibilities of a political chaos that might follow in the wake of the sudden disappearance of the weight of the state. The state had a personal manifestation of the subjects, which was renewed once again with the clear succession at Chernobyl. Yet the Mughal state had a highly sophisticated modern system of law and order that did not turn on the presence or absence of the emperor. Banarasi Das experienced this public functioning of universal state machinery that operated to preserve public law and order. Obviously, travelers like the merchant and business pursuits trusted the system to ensure the smooth circulations of goods, money, and human beings. Ardhakathanaka refers to many such journeys undertaken by members of the Srimad family. Though Das does not develop any theory of the existence of the state, the persistent strand of the political domain surfacing throughout his narrative at least reveals Das's awareness of this essential embedded location of the social within the political. On one such business journey to Agra, Banarasi Das had fallen in with another Hindu moneylender from Agra, belonging to a Maheshwari clan. This person was returning to Agra. Right? So two Brahmins from Mathura and some other merchants, all told totaling 19 in number, had halted near Khatampur at a town called Korara. The two Brahmins made for an Ahir going abode and changed a rupee coin at a silver merchant shop, bought sweets for the woman. The silver merchant came after a while to the Ahir woman's house and accused the Brahmin of giving counterfeit coins. Counterfeiting coins is actually a very, very strong criminal offense against the state and has capital punishment attached. The matter escalated, and all the 19 travelers became embroiled as suspicious thugs, with the locals gathering round and the silver merchant going off to lodge a complaint with the Kotwal. The Kotwal alerted the Hakim brought his diwan, and the two appeared at our sarai at night, I'm quoting, looking like fearful phantoms hereof. With them were hundreds of townsmen, and the whole group surged towards us like a flood. Then followed a state procedure. Everyone was questioned, including Banarasi Das, but they did not produce any proof as to who they were. And they began to talk amongst themselves in Persian. And this is where I would again bring back the present scholarship's understanding of Islamic word, right? Where Persian is understood whether you spoke it or not. And Banarasi Das, as part of this Islamic world, understood very clearly that their lives were in danger. Okay, and Das was able to, so I'm just reading out a bit. Das was able to follow the official deliberations in Persian and clearly understood that though the Kotwal was for a quick punishment for all the thugs, the Qazi's diwan was far more temperate and objective, both about the travelers' identities and the Kotwal's judicial capabilities. So this is what Banarasi Das is recording. In Hindi, that the diwan is saying in Persian. The Kotwal is an idiot and a fool. We do not really know who these people are. And in any case, nothing can be done till morning. In the morning, we shall be able to investigate and find out which class these people really belong to. The travelers were left with guards to wait till the morning, and that's when the Maheshwari suddenly remembered that he could have witnesses out of body. Because his brothers' in-laws stayed in a place which was within the jurisdiction of this particular Kotwal and Qazi. So you had jurisdictions, which was very clear. Banarasi Das was relieved. He said, "Fool, why were you hiding this crucial fact for so long?" So obviously, with the morning, the Kotwal, the Qazi, and the Diwan team, along with massive crowds and vyadas, carrying 19 sulis. Look, this is very serious. They're going to be impaled, right? So this is very, very close to finally getting tortured to death. The Maheshwari Halwa provides details of the case for Bengali, and immediately the Diwan, who had been the most sympathetic, sent off an inquiry team along with the Maheshwari, and soon the travelers' credentials were established beyond doubt. This is a very great state, right? Thus, writing of the aftermath, mentions the polite behavior of the Mughal officer. "Please forgive me for all the trouble, Sahu," and his own response, "Sir, you are our master. Do not blame yourselves for anything that has occurred. Whatever has happened was destined to have happened. It was our own past karma that made you suspect us. The fault was not yours." While the judicial and policing system was therefore impartially functional and recognized by the people as legitimate exercise of state force, which had systemic limits on their jurisdictional powers and procedural requirements which need to be fulfilled before capital sentences could be pronounced and carried out, the language of the subject did not turn on entitlement. The impartial missionary certainly, with the backing of the Mughal state, functioned without the tremendous physical presence of royal authority. This was the everyday governance which was ultimately courteous to the subjects who were lucky to be able to prove their innocence. the Mughal officers were quite conscious of the narrow escape the travelers just had when Banarasi Das approached the officers with the gift of a pipe of Krea, right? And to request that the fraudulent silver merchant be investigated and the money which he had robbed the true Brahmins of be recovered. They humorously replied, "Forget about the money. Go and celebrate the fact that you're still among the living and distribute sweetmeats among your friends as Thanksgiving." Das realized that to get further access to the system would require the use of quote-unquote power and influence of which we had none, as we were all strangers to the place. I decided to give up my efforts and quietly make my way back to the Sarat. We therefore see Das treating the Mughal state as a series of fragmented pockets of jurisdiction, not a connected state with an overarching impartial juridical and law and order enforcement machinery. It is perhaps for this edited understanding of the hierarchical authority of the state that the subjects mistook the local power pocket to be a whole state. And any physical violence the state authority chose to inflict on the ordinary inhabitants could not be questioned. They dared not. Let us quickly return briefly to Muldas's business being sealed off by the Amir and Muldas's widow. The one can see a non-politicized subjectivity at work here, which understood the local authority as the author of the state. There are a series of such disconnected episodes, as I think it's yeah. So you do have these the state also becoming an arbitrary and violent authority, which is not questioned. No one questions the arbitrary violence of the state. So you have even Jahangir suddenly in 1615 issuing a Farman from some misunderstanding from some James would say. And he said that he told all his governors, rid my empires. This is the first one. It is in this particular Persian manuscript, right? Rid my empire of all the Jaina budgets written. So you have, at least in John, you have the governor following the orders and imprisoning. And I quote, countless townsmen, ornament weavers, money lenders, bankers, gold and silver smiths had been arbitrarily put into prison. We trembled at the news and instantly gave up the thought of going back home. We turned instant to a silver wood. We were lucky to sight a tiny fortress hidden in the midst of the jungle and lived there for 40 days. Then fortunes reversed. After noon, released the subjects here imprisoned. We returned home in peace and were united with our near ones after a long and painful separation. Because Jahangir had thought the better of this peculiar, irrational Farman and had withdrawn it. That's the reason why the governors released the prisoners and things returned to normal, right? So you do have these, political episodes which have these moments of total, utter violation of ordinary lives of people. But people have no recourse. Banarasi Das was at that point out of Jaunpur. The moment he heard the news, he decided not to go back home, right? He went and hid in a forest, right? So you do not have any questions. There are no particular, frame of entitlement, political entitlement that you see here. Right. So I'll just wind up. There was an Islamic understanding of public order that all communities seem to respect and stand in great awe of. But while the notion of individuated subjectivity turned self-consciously on a spiritual quest, the same could not be said of a juridico-political subjectivity which remained confined to a passive acceptance of a political order. Even such a sharp intellect like that of Banarasi Das remained limited to such a passive receptivity of state power. The vocabulary of the political seemed to be missing from the repertoire of the pre-colonial subjects language. India had to wait for the colonial period for a new language of political entitlement to enter the subjective consciousness of different communities. New ways of defining exclusions and inclusions would be the corollary of the colonial process of developing a new juridical language for the colonized subjects. Thank you.